Good. So I will just crack on here. It's always a challenge to do these 16 positions in an hour. So since I do provide homework to everyone who, provide feedback to everyone who sent in advance. We're not going to do question and answers here doing it. So here, this is a blitz game of my own. I played Queen C2 and my opponent resigned. And I was just checking them randomly with the engine to see if there was any funny business anywhere, any funny additions. And the fun thing is that after Queen A4, Black suddenly cannot queen the pawn. And it was sort of 50-50 if people had put in Queen C2 or put in the right move, which is Queen D3, where if we now go to, let's say, B8, we go to C2. And now the pawn queens and there's no perpetuals or anything. So there was even a very strong player who had Queen C2 here. I think 2 IMs I can think of. And it's just a little, yeah, I see one of them recognized that he had a wrong with an ouch. That's debate for the day. Ouch, spelled O-U-C-H or A-U-C-H. Or O-W-C-H. Anyway, let's move on to the next position. I think this one was clear enough. Queen D3 wins very easily. Here, this was probably the easiest position. This was for those who followed Sabino's class. It was a little theme from that in this position, there's just a little intermediate move here, bishop f8 check. I think more or less everyone had this one right. Not everyone noted down bishop f8, but when you went for it, I assumed you've seen it. So I was friendly this time around. This position here, I think this showed up in analysis of a different position. And here there was some ways to go wrong, and people tried different ways. So one way people went wrong was rook d takes d5, and failing to see that white actually is threatening to give checkmate. So this is defense. You have to try to find your opponent's threats, and you have to also see see the various things. This is what we call elimination. You think of a move and then you try to refute it. So here also c takes d5 was tried, but here we have check, takes, and I think someone went to h4 with the bishop in their analysis. But we see this position, we see that there is not great counterplay for black. And this could come in various ways. It was white's main threat. And here the extra bishop will win the game. It's the more you look at this, the more disappointed you get with white's position, with black's position. So see, there were other attempts tried, I think. Someone tried a3, and here again we can do this, and it's a piece up. But somehow the computer wanted e4. And it's not very human, and I don't care about non-human things here unless we can learn from them. Here we had a very simple continuation for white, so that's enough. So the only move is rook f8. The idea is very simple. In all these continuations, black has rook takes f6. White doesn't have anything except for moving the rook back and forwards in the g file. If he takes an f7, king g8, and he's simply lost. Okay, so the simpler positions here, we're not going to slow down. We're going to motor through so that when we can get to the more difficult positions, we'll have a chance to see it. Someone say they didn't see this move. Well, yeah. If you don't see it, you cannot suggest it. But what's important with doing training like this is you learn from your thinking patterns, but you also install various chess patterns in your brain by having worked actively at it. And Christopher points out that Sam didn't see it immediately either. Robert is asking, if this position only be solved with an elimination technique? Well, elimination is the default in defense. I think pattern recognition could solve it. For some people, probably would. For me, it's for me it's a very normal pattern. But whether or not it's first time you see an idea like this, or you haven't really paid attention to this kind of idea before, or it's an actual calculation debate about how to solve the position with seeing the various threats from the opponent and trying to refute your own moves, I don't think that's such an important idea. We can say it's an important discussion. I think what's important is that we have these ideas, we can use them, and most things can be solved in more than one way. I generally think, from experience at least, that people solve things in the most bizarre ways, and whenever it's solved, I never argue with them. I think it's much more interesting to have a debate about how to solve things when people don't solve them. Okay, let's move on. Here, now, here there was a common thing, and we'll talk about this endlessly. I get back to it all the time because calculation is very important in chess. Yusupov said maybe it's 30% of chess. Maybe it's even more, I would say. But here, for example, it's very important not to overlook longer variation. I think 30%, it's actually, we can have a pie chart discussion at some point in the Facebook group. Because there is positional understanding, pattern recognition, there's positional analysis, there is endgame memorization, there's endgame technique, and there is opening preparation and understanding of dynamics. And there are probably more things. In these positions here, of course, there's a lot of pattern recognition as well, but there's also calculation. So many people suggested rook d7 in this position. I think we're dealing with position number 4 at this moment. And the idea is quite gratifying. Mate. But if we look at all of Black's replies slowly, and good calculation is always done so slowly that you are in control of everything, just like driving a car. Never drive faster than you are in control of the car, which means if you're not a very good driver, don't drive very fast. And we, of course, know some drivers get paid for driving 300 kilometers an hour or something like this. Or however fast they drive in the Formula One. Maybe it's only 200, 250. So here, if you don't miss the options if you don't see the options for the opponent, you're in trouble. The problem here is, very simply, it didn't work out. Like this. So, for this reason, we need to take the knight first. In the game, he took an e4. And then he took on g7, which was horrific. So I'm being told that the maximum speed in Formula One is 372.6 kilometers per hour. This was a game, and here things have not gone as well for white as they should have. After f takes e4, now rook d7 worked. I'm not sure exactly what white was missed. White is a very strong Danish player, Jesper Thybo, who, yeah, someone is suggesting maybe this and this. I was thinking he could have been confused by this, but we have a very nice retreat. Well, Thybo is he's an IM still. I think he will get the GM title next time. But he's almost 2,600. So I'm sort of struggling to see what he went wrong. And that little blip there was just me saving this variation in my notes. So if takes here, white is winning. I'm not sure what he failed to see, but I should say that those of you who did play bishop e4 almost categorically had bishop takes c3 as the main defensive try. And here, white should take on f5. There was also suggested take on c6. But in this position here, I'm not sure it's that much of an advantage for white here. This was the main problem. Piece down. Someone suggested this. Yeah, it's completely lost, and simply missed that queen f6 defends everything. But bishop takes f5. And if bishop takes e1, we're doing quite well. So the critical line is here. Takes, 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 takes. And here white is better. I don't know if somehow he didn't like this. Christopher asked, how much is white better? I think quite a lot. These pawns in the center will march on quite easily. Black is very passive. The king is stuck in the corner. I think it's quite a big advantage. I think so why not rook d7 instead of bishop f5 is asked. I would guess it's bishop g7. Might not be bishop g7, might be. There's various options here. If I play queen f6, is all your pieces hanging? What if I play queen f6? Now both your bishop and your rook are hanging. So I'm just going to ask the computer in case I'm wrong. And the computer says that black is winning. And unfortunately it unloads a bit slowly. So, okay. I think we're done with this position. We have a lot of positions. So I'm going to go through them very quickly. you please ask questions. If you have questions, ask them. I know things are going to go quickly. What about after f takes e4? Okay, so we already went over f takes e4, and here white has rook d7. And the idea is that this time it works. And you cannot eliminate the, you don't have knight takes c3 anymore. So we already went over that. Okay. So this one was supplied by Linear, and it's started from this position. So these positional exercises, some of them are not so difficult like this one. Some of them are more difficult. Shiva, we're not guessing in the class here. You've all sent your submissions and so on. So I'm just explaining what's happening. So we have worst placed knight here that's not only badly placed, but also in the way of the other pieces. And the question from that, okay, there's also like what's white planning? Planning bishop b2. And some people suggested bishop d6 with the idea net f8, knight g6 to f4. That seems quite slow to me, and I think white will probably do something sensible before that. And I'm not sure the knight is so well placed on f4. And the bishop is definitely well placed on f8. It has defensive function at the moment. So this is a simple question of putting the pieces on the right squares. So the right move here is knight b8. a5 or b6 first is also possible, but then after bishop b2, you have to play f6. Here you don't have to play f6 because you go there very quickly. So this is simple, yeah, simple development is mentioned. It is, but it's also simple anti-development because it puts the remaining piece back on the 8th rank. So here the knight goes to d4 at best square. If white plays c3, then black will play a5, b6, and bishop a6, and we'll always put pressure on d3. It's just a middle game position, and of course white is not really worse, but with black we have to play good moves, and then chances will come later. Someone points out that the rook on e8 has been put on the wrong square. The king belongs there. Okay, let's move on. So here, this is a little more tricky. A lot of people solved that, except for the player playing. So there's been suggestions of bishop takes h6 or queen h4 and trying to make an attack, but it's not really happening. So those who suggested bishop takes h6, I showed back bishop takes h6, and there's no follow-ups working. Knight h4 to g6, we always have rook g8. And queen h4 has been suggested, but I don't see the big threat. There's some knight g5 and queen c4 or something. But let's say I play knight f6. You give this check, and I play king d8. And you play queen c4 and queen d5, and I don't see the white is achieving much. This is very commonly the situation that you need to create more obvious weaknesses, or you have to include more pieces in the play. And here it's tempting to play bishop c3, but after knight b5, the knight comes in, and then black's in time to defend himself. He gets enough time to defend all his weaknesses. So for this reason, we should immediately play h4. I think in the game was played here, and then also knight b5, and bishop c3 doesn't exist anymore. We'll see in a moment that that's quite important. The knight on e7 It's very badly placed. It's now a well-placed piece. So the right move is h4. And as you can see here, Linear has been helpful, but he put things in the wrong color. So we put weaknesses in green and our intended move in green. So white wants to play h4, h5. And the pawn structure will collapse on the queen side. And black has only one move to really deal with this. For example, something like this here is not good. We don't actually need variations to see a white getting h5 is an achievement. The position is improved. But of course, it's nice to see them. If black plays knight f6, then we have time for bishop c3. h5 is still interesting, but bishop c3, and now the e-pawn is under attack. Well, if you play rook c1, I have very quickly knight b5 again. h5, knight h5. Queen f7. What should I play? Queen f6 or queen g6? You want to exchange and play knight h4. So first of all, I have the strong feeling of immediately saying long variation, wrong variation. I'm just feeling that there will be a mistake here somewhere. You're relying too much on calculation. For example, this is just human. If queen g6, then take. So this was the intention here was to come here, but maybe this is fine. But also, yeah, maybe rook c6 first, but then maybe I have rook f8 defending board. But I'm just thinking, what about if I play rook f8, you take, and I play king g8? I'm not desperately trying to hang on to this h-pawn. Here, you know, white is fine, but black might be fine as well. Next move is rook e8 and then rook e6. Maybe I'm playing rook f6 to defend the h6 pawn and prepare rook f8. I would say the position is quite unclear. So this is, okay, nice attempt. But here with bishop c3, we can see the e5 pawn is under a lot of unpleasant attack. And it's quite simple. So this is the variation Linear has provided me. And here, and white is ready for h5 again. And if h5 here, I think knight g5 check is very strong. I think, if nothing else, so king must go here. We have here, and black's position is full of weaknesses. We take back with the pawn on e4. The game, of course, goes on. But we see that from the starting position, we have certainly made progress. This position is, there's a few of these positions where they're a bit unclear, and I will put them, the games for some of the positions in the Facebook group. And if you're not a member of the Facebook group and you're watching this live, you can email me at the 365 homework club at gmail.com, and I will send you the link. Why not knight c6 instead of knight d5? Yeah, there was many options, but what is clear everywhere is the white is pressing. So why not knight c6? I don't want to, you know, I have this habit of getting bogged down in a position, and then we spend 1 hour on one position. I'm tempted to play b5 here. I'm tempted to play h5. I'm very tempted to play b5. I think this has improved the position. I'm threatening rook c5, for example. I'm threatening to take an e5. Again, the position is not decisive. White has an advantage, but here we can see black's under a lot of pressure. So since we have enough problems coming, I'm moving on. So this position here, provided by Ivan, which is a Kasparov short game, and inspired me to find more Kasparov short games. White to play, and this is again a positional decision. We'll have to look at, you know, worst placed pieces, weaknesses, and so on. In this position, the key thing is what is black trying to do? And I think a lot of you saw that black would love to play b3. And Kasparov, he played b3, I think. No, he didn't play b3. But the idea with b3 is it misses black's different idea, which is he also wants to play c5. And we can prevent both moves with queen f3 once we see this. But if you play queen d3, then I have c5. That's why queen f3 is the move. So let me just see if he actually, Kasparov did play b3, as Ivan is saying. And he suggested as main line. Ivan suggests after after queen f3 here, rook b1, and white would win a pawn. And otherwise, white get to play b3, and then we have the weakness on b4. Like after we play b3, we have this weakness, the black's tied down, and we have the free hand to create an attack on the king side, and we're also threatening bishop takes h6, is correct. So if white plays this move, which a lot of you saw, he is much better. Okay, I think this is easy enough. In general, with these positions, unless there's specific questions, I'm trying to go through the way of thinking that would solve them. So I'm not going to go through every line. I'm not going to go through every detail. I don't want to approach it in the same way as you would if you're analyzing with a computer, where you're sifting through all these possible moves. I'd rather think about it like if we're sitting as a human at the board, as you have been doing with the exercises, how would I approach it? And here, for me, this is a positional situation, and the most important aspects of the position are the weakness on b4, and black wants to play c5 to defend it, or he wants to play b3. And Alberto points out that after b3, c5, dc6, then the only real pawn is maybe, weakness is maybe the pawn on a5. And that's well pointed out. But the idea that all of black's pawns are weak, I don't understand that. They're on the dark squares, but they're also all defended at the moment. Can I analyze queen f3, d3, bishop h6? Yes, I can. Here. I think that's the end of the analysis. If black gets to play b3, then he's doing well. And if white plays b3 here, we'll play bishop c3, and too much is hanging. There can always be more moves, but the pawn on c2 is defended. Rook e7, queen f8. Yep. So this is not really worth analyzing. Okay, let's move on. This position here, black to play. This it was my intention. It was supposed to be very easy, but it turns out it's a little more difficult than I thought it was. So first of all, one or two missed that it's black to play. Remember to check the little triangles, see who's to play. So what is happening here? So we have some weaknesses. Have here, and we also have over here. Why not g5? Well, because white has a light squared bishop, which by the way is his worst place piece, and our worst place piece is the knight on d7. So if we see this, hopefully we can also very quickly see white's idea. Let's put in a null move. So now it's white to play. White wants to play bishop e2. If we play g4, the bishop will have a h4. Bishop will have a great square on g4, and white has improved his position. If we play g4, now in this position, rook's the worst place piece. The weaknesses are still here. White will play h3, and he will get counterplay. So let's go back to that. Here is our worst place piece. This is our opponent's idea, and this is maybe the most important weakness. So in the game, black played very simple natural moves that dealt with all of these issues. He took on d4, white took back, and then he played knight f8. Now some of you suggested knight c5. The issue is after b4, knight e6, rook d2, things are not so obvious. White is maybe playing b5 in some positions, taking back with the knight, I would assume. And if d4 here, I think knight e2 should be fine. And white is probably thinking about knight g3 to f5 very quickly. And black's not really getting to what he wants to do, which is taking the pawn on e5. So here, this happens sometimes. You know, I check things with the engine. I look at them myself. And after, I'm thinking about what happens if you play like this. I think for a chess player to evolve, aha, now I see the problem. Okay, what I was thinking was here, we can take here, but I simply missed this check. I think for a chess player to evolve and to improve, okay, you can play rook e5, I play knight h5, and I return with the knight to g3, and I'm also okay. I don't think the check on e1 is that devastating. I have knight g3. I think white's okay. So Christopher was pointing out here that black could play here. So you give check and go here, and then after knight g3, it's important to see that I'm defending the rook here. So bishop b5, I can just take it. Actually, I think this is a huge blunder. So I think here things suddenly went white's way. Okay. So there was a question about why not take on e5 immediately. So the issue is after take. Sorry, no, I don't take. You take on e5, I don't take on b6 because then you get d4. It's important white keep control on the d4. I play bishop e2. Now I'm threatening to take on h5. It's as simple as that. If you play h4, I play bishop g4. If you play g4, play h3. So, Nicola, I'm not sure exactly where. Robert asking, would I rather be a pawn down with pressure on e5 than allowing this? Well, the thing is, let's see how it comes in the game. I think that's a part of the equation. Knight f8. Now, white doesn't have bishop e2. Then comes knight e6 and d4. So you must go back. And then we take. You tried bishop d3. Bishop e2 is still d4. And where's the knight going? So, okay, Nicolo had his line he wanted to ask about. Take, knight c5. b4, knight e6. Rook d2. d4, knight e2. I want to play h4 here. Okay. That seems quite reasonable. So probably white would play here. Knight g1. I don't want to go to g1. We'll probably have some position like this. And is this so bad for white? Knight d5 instead. I don't know if you can hear the weather outside, but it's not a day with good weather here in Scotland. Apparently, it's never a day with good weather. Here, white plays rook g1, and I don't see why it's so bad. This square on c3, I don't see how it can inflict real damage. So rook g1, knight e3. Okay, currently white's a pawn up, so it's for sure it's compensation, but it's not simple stuff. I play g3. I'm ready to play bishop h3. Okay, but you're not playing for an advantage here with black. Pawn down. And there's like all these suggestions long down, and like we can always find different moves. But idea of knight c5 is go to e6. Here you don't have this. This b4 move now doesn't make sense where rook takes e5. You say black looks better. Yeah, maybe I played defensive moves that weren't the best for white either. We can always look around, but remember when we get 3-4 moves away from the initial position, unless we're sitting with an engine and checking everything, but if we're doing it with our limited human brains and we don't have the chance to constantly check what an engine would say, then basically we're just compiling mistakes very quickly. Here we have something very simple, black's better. The other variation, it becomes very complicated. Maybe some likes the look of the black position, which becomes argumentative rather than really, is this a good way of playing? Is things going in the right directions? No, they're not. So let's get back to that here. Knight f8. We can always play rook takes e5, but the knight comes to e6. We prevent the bishop e2, which is white's main idea. I think it's really classy play by black. And now I want to move on. Here, white to play. Again, this is positional stuff. So what's black's idea? Wants to take and play bishop h6. And then we're left with a weak pawn here. White's positions, things have gone wrong. No doubt about that. In the game he played knight d2. After take, bishop h6 would have been very strong. He played bishop d6 in the game. We're not going to concentrate on that, but bishop h6 would have been very unpleasant. With king f2, I think we have potentially we have queen d8, but we could also have d takes c4 and queen f5 in some positions. Well, white wants to play king f2 anyway, I think. So here. Why not queen c7? Why not queen c7? I think the main reason is I play here and knight f4. And we don't want to allow that. In the game, he played bishop d6 and castled. And the position was quite complicated. If he takes on g3 now, take e4, with chances for both sides. Black king looks very uncomfortable in the center. And here it's a different story. I think queen c7, maybe we also castle long and e4. Also knight e2. Here's knight e2 suggested here. Okay. Now this should be quite an easy positional exercise for black. People suggesting d takes c4. I don't think that's the best way forward. So worst placed piece at the moment is the knight here. Where the weakness is, well, they're here and here. So, okay, dc4 and bishop e3. Yeah, I'm missing the tactics here. Yeah, I was thinking knight f6. But then, you know, I missed this move and now there's no pin. We don't have knight e4. But yes, d takes c4 and bishop e3. Christus says it's easy but not positional. Yes, easy and simple are two very different things. And I'm not ashamed of making mistakes in the class. I make them outside class and all the time. I think here we can see that white is dealing with problems. You can always analyze, you know, like you can defend better. The thing is, if white puts the knight here, he just doesn't experience the same kind of troubles. And that's what simple decisions are about. You put the knight here, now you're ready for castle and e4 and all that stuff. Like for example here, we have an unclear position. The game goes on, and many things can happen. White can maybe try something with knight f8 and f6. I don't know if black can try that. I don't know if white was afraid of that. But on the same time, he has to place his pieces on weird squares, and then white will open the center in the meantime. And here, again, this is human thinking. I'm just thinking something like this. Am I sure I want to be black in this position? Maybe not bishop c4 because of b5. Maybe rook e1. Maybe bishop d3 with the idea rook d1. Here, because I am a few moves away from my initial decision, I'm thinking conceptually, because I know any calculation I do will have a random element to it, as in it will probably be dead wrong. Here I'm thinking, is this something I'm wanting to play with black or with white? Reality is, it looks quite uncomfortable for black. Let's say cd5 and rook e1. Now bishop b5 and knight d5 are both coming. I don't think this is clear at all. And we can analyze this deeply, and we can find new ideas from both sides, especially if we don't use engines. But from the initial point here of us making a decision, we have either a really bad position, knight d2 with taken bishop h6, where we have to do very unpleasant things to ourselves, or we can go in for this big mess where we have no way of knowing who is better for. We can of course check with an engine, and I deliberately don't want to do that. I want to talk in human terms. So this is this decision. Let's move on. This one here is calculation, and it's simply of finding out where to put the bishop. So there's a few lines people suggested, like here, here, here. And it's very important when we go through variations that we don't go too fast. I say this again and again and again, because it's important again and again and again. And here, rather than rook c8, as someone suggested, bishop f8. And white has just lost all his pieces. And so suggested, why not knight f6? Because after take, the position has a draws quality to it. The right move is bishop a3. Now we're threatening knight d6. We're preventing rook c1 check. Black's in really, really big troubles. Yes, I will mention bishop d6. And let's say king h8 to get out of all the pins. And then knight c5. Double threat, must take. And now we have a more or less lost time game for black. The two bishops, the weakness in a7. More moves will be played, but black has weaknesses everywhere. His pieces are worse. His pawns are split. It's a very big advantage. And I appreciate that for some people, these things might not be obvious. I'm trying to explain them as we go along. With so many things to cover, I won't go deeply into that. So, mention bishop d6. And here it's important to see that black plays queen e6, queen c6. I think queen e6, there are some very nice ideas for white. But here, okay, I have three moves suggested, like king h2, I have queen c4. That doesn't work. Knight g5, we have check. We take on g5, exchange up. And if knight f6, then I cannot take it. But after king h8, too many white pieces are hanging. Queen d5, and it would work if I'm forced to take on d5, since I can't take on f6. I have queen c1. And someone did suggest this, and this is the refutation. Okay, now he had check here, but I think bishop f6 might also be reasonable for black, but check and take on f6 and over. So we're already getting into the difficult stuff here. Let's, for that reason, move on. Here, black to play. What is white's main threat? If you don't see it, you're in trouble. If you're thinking he wants to take on h3. Actually, white wants to play queen g5 and rook h4 and mate you. So you have to very desperately play bishop g7. In the game, short played here, and Kasparov actually took on h3. The whole game, I'm going to put this in the Facebook group. And Christopher said he did better in the difficult stuff. Yeah, I think you're more focused. So here the key point is, someone suggested queen b8 after queen h4, bishop g7. Want to see that white wants to occupy the light squares. And now rook f4, and the queen will come to f6, and the rook to h4, and be massive bleeding. Here, the only move is bishop g7. If we exchange bishops, keep control of the f6 square, we're fine. If white plays rook e7, we give up the queen. And I think unless we blunder the pawn on a6, there's no way for white to really make progress. I would play king g7 and bishop d8 and rook e7, something like that. Slow play. I just won't allow queen c8 and queen takes a6. It'll be interesting to see how white will try to make progress here. I don't see it myself. Maybe king g7, king g8. And it's important, some people have missed rook e7 or not mentioned it. I would expect a move that wins the queen is mentioned. Some are also mentioning queen d8 here, but after rook takes f7, things have gone very much wrong. It's the same fortress will appear just without pawns, in which case it's no longer a fortress. Queen h4 or queen g5 is possible. After take, here, queen f8, queen d6, and rook e8, we see that black will come in to the e file and give a lot of counterplay. Boris has a good point here. Yeah, I also thought that. That was my thinking as well. Let's say white takes on h3, and we have something like this. And we have to be a little careful with black that this doesn't happen to us. But I'm thinking, what if I'm very, how could I say, patient. Patient is the word I'm looking for. I play here, maybe I can take an f5. Say the queen will invade here. This time it's Christopher's right. The queen will come here and we'll get to take an a8. So maybe in these kind of positions, bishop d8, I'm not sure about this. What about here? What about this kind of position? I don't see how white is penetrating here. But it does feel a little bit scary. Queen f4, I play bishop e7. Or rook d7, no, not rook d7, I play bishop e7. For sure, white will try to break the fortress. From black's perspective, there is just nothing else to try. Again, I'm putting this game on the Facebook group, and we'll see. See if anyone can break it. It's definitely worth half an hour of group analysis, which will not happen today. So here, white will probably try to put the king on f5 and create a zugzwang. I'm definitely going to have fun trying to look at this. So I'm moving on to the next example. Again, this is where later the forum and for the time being the Facebook group is it's a very good place to go into details with things. So we don't want to occupy the whole lesson. Okay, here, white to play. This one I think was one of the two most difficult positions. So the very popular suggestion was to come with a combination here. And after this is definitely a fortress. This is probably the easiest thing to hold for black. Still, white can try to take an a6 and slowly play the pawn to f5 and see if he can create some threats, but I think the rook will always go to e5 and it will be fine. Gelfand sometimes jokingly say that I'm the world's foremost expert in fortresses. I don't know if it's because he thinks I always get such bad positions. I know a lot about defense. But I did do some work on it, and the key way to breaking a fortress is usually zugzwang. And here white would try to maybe get the pawn to f5 or f6 and try to put black in zugzwang. But I think black should always be able to find squares for the rook. I cannot see that it can be put in a position where it can go nowhere else. And the black king is always safe on g8 and h8. The white king cannot come in and create something. If we try to come with the pawn to f5 and try to take with the king in order to play g5, g6, I think black can always put the rook on e5. And as long as the king doesn't get past, black will have bishop e7, bishop f8 forever, or king moves, and he won't be put in zugzwang. I know this, for some, this might sound a little abstract, conceptual thinking, but the idea of these classes is not for everyone to understand everything. You know, we have the forum for deeper discussions of things and for questions here. So the key for white in this position is to keep control of the dark squares around the king. So the right move here is bishop f6. The idea is very simple. I want to play g5 and rook h4. It's very difficult to resist. So my variation here goes, a5 is one variation, g5, and here. We're attacking the rook also. So a5 is typical for me, like, okay, I'll throw in a null move. If black plays bishop g7, we'll play g5, and takes, and queen takes, and we have rook h4 coming. Let's say we try here, and then we take this one. And now, with the d pawn, with the attacks against the king, white has a tremendous attack, a winning attack. Could probably continue this variation quite easily. Queen b3. And here, a good moment to think. We want to put the pawn to d7 for sure. It seems very tempting to start with queen e7. And d6 is coming on the next move. We always have rook f4 coming. We always have ideas like rook h4, queen f6. I think black is totally lost. Why not queen d7? It is possibly also a good move, but for me, the rook on f8, my queen is in the way of the pawn. So this tempo, let's see here. What do I want to do here? I want to do two things. I want to do this, you know, mate. It's my one plan. My other plan is queen. Now, if you notice, when I come here, I'm threatening the rook. So I would rather have that my queen is protecting all the squares of the pawn. Christopher is mentioning that sometimes, if the pawn's on d7, the black rook's on f8. Let's try to put the black rook on f8. So if we're here, then white will play, let's say the black queen's on d3, white will play queen takes f8 and rook e8 check. It's pointed out we can take an a6, but this pawn is so far away from a1, it has no relevance. In these kind of positions here also, I can play rook h4 and threaten to play rook h8 and threaten to play queen f6. And Christopher sees that rook takes f8 is needed in one variation. If black gets a pawn to b3, we're probably talking a variation like this, and here it is needed. I'm not sure that rook h4 is not winning. Here I'm threatening queen f6 and I'm threatening rook h8. Like here, I'm sure that I win in more than one way. Let's just say queen f6 for the simplest way. Okay, so I know this example is very difficult. We have a few more to go through, so it's going to go a bit quicker. I think I'm going to dial down the difficulty of a few examples for next week and keep more of the medium examples. That's why I haven't sent out the new sheet, and I'll send it out either late tonight or we'll send it out tomorrow, because I want to see how this class goes before I commit to how to do things in the next class. Okay, this position here. And this position, this is a rapid game between Short and Kasparov. And Short gave up the exchange and had glorious compensation for it. White is still better. And there are lots of options for both players here. So the game continued king g8, bishop d4, and black played d5 to try to get some exchanges and freeze pieces. And they had a very complicated game, as you can see. And in the end, black actually won the game. So white was better here. Again, thank you to Renier for pointing out this position. From a starting point, we should notice that when we have these kind of ideas, black will always have h5. So it doesn't break through in the h file very easily. But there's a great idea. The way I'm thinking of this position is, this is the move I want to play. My knight on d4, my knight on c3, they are actually not very well placed pieces. The knight on c3 even less than the knight on d4. But for me, it's like, main thing is rook h3. And what about my bishop? No function. So for that reason, I want my bishop here. I want to eliminate black's best piece. For that reason, knight e6, fe6, and bishop d4. And now I'm threatening to take. I'm also threatening to take here and to take here. And we have queen c7 is forced. The queen is no longer hanging and it's defending on the 7th rank. Take on g6. Bishop f8. And here in this position, there are quite a lot of ways to do it. We often see that with strong tactical continuations, that a few moves down the line, suddenly there are many options. The one I have is mainline for me is this, with rook h3 coming. But there are really many ways to skin the cat here. Not that I'm in favor of skinning cats. Black is totally passive. We can imagine rook h3, queen g4, and rook takes h7 would be unpleasant. I have a line that goes like this, stopping here. I guess the next move is queen g4. Black is totally busted. Maybe it's queen f2. Like I was thinking rook d7, queen f2 here, then I have this move. Looks very good, winning everything. So here, rook e7 is suggested. Okay, I'm playing queen g3. I assume that queen g8 and here, and I'm very happy. Why not queen f2? Well, I wanted to take an e5. f8 is not hanging, but e5 is. And here I'm threatening rook takes f8. And if bishop g7, I have rook takes h7. So why rook queen f2? If first of all, this is doing live. This is me thinking live. So here I saw that this was winning because the pawn takes and takes here. If the rook's on e7, it's no longer hanging. So it's that simple. I think I managed to explain the initial attacking idea. After that, there are many options, and I think from the perspective of calculation, we don't need to calculate everything here. We have a natural horizon, 3-4 moves, and then there's so many options. The only thing we have to just look at quickly is here. Just point out this variation. Black cannot take on d3. We have to see this. We have to see the other thing, that there are so many attacking options, and whether or not I commit to something on move 6 or not doesn't matter at this point, because these exercises, these 60 exercises, are what you want to play here and why. If your justification is wrong on move 3 or 4, and it's like a position where there's so many options, I know that in a game you would find the right move, so I don't mark it down as wrong. It's a good idea. And oh yeah, there's one more variation I wanted to show you, which was here, 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 check, here, and here. These kind of variations we need to see, because it's the attempt to immediately refute our sacrifice. But if we have so many options, and this looks good, and this looks good, and this looks good, we don't need accuracy, because we only need accuracy as long as we want to make a decision. Okay, let's move on. This rook ending for black here. Now, I first want to show how the game ended, because a lot of you didn't understand this point. They were thinking that here black draws, which could look like it's the case, but it's not. So eventually we come into this position. White is threatening f6. So black tries to prevent it, and it comes anyway. And here, okay, rook f6 could have been played, and white would play king e7 and queen. And how to win queen against rook, we'll do that another time. So that's the starting point to know that if white has time, he wins. So Sabine Feuser, who was black here, had to find a very difficult defense with no time. It really wasn't possible. So some suggestions here have been, someone suggested this, which was not very good. King b3 was suggested. And try to go here and here. But here we're in time to give a check. In-game even would be dangerous for black, and very impractical, but here it's going to be pawn ending where white has the pawn. So for that reason, black had to find this fantastic move. Now, if white doesn't play d7, black will have time to rook d3, and we can do all the other things, and white won't be able to advance the pawn to f6. There won't be time. So d7 is the only thing. Rook d3, and king e6. And here again, if we take the queen with a1, we lose after f5. So here it was important to find really nice idea. Here first we're trying to annoy white. If white doesn't have time, like if white goes to d8, we can play here. The king can come out, but again we can annoy it. But if white plays rook e6 with the hope of having a winning queen ending, or very promising queen ending, with the g pawn it's a draw. With the f pawn generally it's not. Here black can play queen here, and she's in time to give perpetual. This is the kind of moves where it's very easy from afar to think, oh, I play rook e6 and so on. But if you see no, I can play this. See the move by move. You'll see here we escape with perpetual. And as is correctly pointed out, we need this move. Now, if you imagine here in this position that the king was on b2, we just don't have this option. We're lacking the ability to play queen g7 check. So that is the difference. It's a very deep calculation. And have to remember that some of you are rated around 1,000, or just a little bit more. We have some easier positions, and we have some very difficult positions where I understand you can't do it, but we also have IMs and GMs doing the homework. We have 2,600 player doing the homework. So I'm trying to cover the whole group. So here, yeah, it's just very deep point, and it's in calculation terms, it's what we call comparison. That you see, you have this option if you play the king. Let's try to very quickly go back. That here, well, we want to play this one. We have to do it. So we have to play here or here, because the pawn is hanging. Putting it on b3 actually is slightly strange, because we're not threatening to queen the pawn. Christopher is saying most of the exercises is 2,200 plus. Yes, I do think I need to put in some more easy exercises. I'm learning from doing this as well, and I hope all of you are receiving the homework, are understanding that that I really care, and I try to give good feedback. And my feedback is usually based on not telling you what the right move is, but trying to point out what you're missing, how you can think better, and you have a chance again to look again before the lesson. Today it was very cramped for time, so I only managed to send out the last feedback just before the lesson. But this is my intention, to try to have a conversation about how to solve things and help you improve the way you think. And Tajasvi is asking, where can we get the homework? It is sent out on email, so make sure that we have your email. If you're not a paying subscriber, you have no business being here. Also, it's in the Facebook group. So it's available both places, and I will make sure that by the end of Tuesday evening, the homework is sent out. And next week, I want to keep the balance between some easier positions and some more difficult positions. Maybe on page 3, we'll have the friendly and the unfriendly position next week. Okay, so I hope for you who are not able to solve this position, that you understand the thinking, even if you think this is beyond me. At the moment it might be, but long term, if you understand things now, long term there's a real chance that you can do it. First you need to understand it before you can do it. So Chisal, our moderator will look at you and send it to you. Okay, so we have 2 positions to go. Let me just put this in. So here, is this really last position? I feel like there should be one before. Yes, this one here, black to play. Sometimes chess-based does this, it skips 2 positions ahead. So here there's a lot of ideas of trying to trap the bishop, which don't work the moment the c file is open. Like, let's say c takes, c takes. If we are able to exchange the pawns to c file, then for example, white has rook d5, defending the bishop on a5, or have rook c1 defending the bishop in the c file. So these things are important to understand. And like, for example, bishop e7 doesn't work because c takes c takes b4, and if you take here, I play king b3. Now I have rook c1, and white is actually better here. The bishop's not getting trapped. Rooks come up the c file. a5 is a weakness. So you have to do something immediately. In the game, he played b3, which is a nice idea. And after king b3, rook a7. And here I play bishop d8. And after bishop d6, black was the exchange up and better. The game continued here. But also, I'm not sure this is a game. My memory is failing me. This is the best move here. And then rook d8, and black will have to take some time to untangle himself. And meanwhile, the pawns are providing very, very good counterplay. And here white is fine. We'll make a draw. So this idea is the first step of seeing it. And then the second step is to understand the move order, which is rook a7 first. And after bishop b6, now we have b3. If the king goes back, black plays rook a6, and white is in a lot of trouble. If takes, we have rook b7. Now, this is one of the moments I'm talking about where I don't understand something. This happens all the time. I'm thinking, can we play here? But I think rook a6 here, and now this bishop is actually trapped. Ah, see, this is wrong. Yeah, here, Christopher's right. Here, white is in time for this. Christopher's thinking the same as me, but he doesn't have to talk. So Boris is pointing out king d7 is good. Christopher and I, we both see c4. I think Boris is right. I think Christopher's right. I think I'm right. And there's more than one way to do it here. The bishop is trapped. So this was the thinking behind this. I think Boris is right in king d7. Anyway, this was the thinking behind this position, that b3 is the first idea, and then we can see there are two different move orders to do it in, and we see which one is the best one. This is difficult stuff. If you see the game here, you can see that b3 was played, and then here, after rook a7, black played here, and actually black was fine, but it was later, white was fine, but black later won. But I gave you this line already. And so on. Okay, last position. This does not look right. Here we go. This was a slightly changed position from a book I'm editing at the moment by two Israeli authors, which is called Think Like a Machine, which will be out probably in July. I was in the United States in the last 2 weeks, and together with mainly with Sam Shankland, but also with Christopher, we looked at various positions. And the position in the book, which was from a game, I think white had a pawn on a3 or a4, and the black rook was on a8. So I moved things around a little bit so that queen h5 didn't give an advantage. So there was some many suggestions here, but mainly it's a candidate position. So I want to point out that this kind of position here is very unclear, and Sam Collins suggested a very nice line. Check, bishop g7, queen e8 mate, and here again mating attack. So very nice line. The black plays h6. And the position is wildly unclear. The computer says equal. Thank you very much. Nothing here feels equal for a human. It's just very, very messy. And what we can see is that white doesn't have a clear killer blow. So it's a candidate move exercise. Sam didn't solve it. I think we had maybe 2 or 3 submissions that solved it. Christian say he didn't solve it either. So this is one of the cases of big imagination. What we want to do is we want to play knight g5, but the real problem is g takes h6. So the winning move is rook g6. I know it looks almost absurd. Now knight g5 is coming, and after takes, still coming. I'm being told that almost absurd is wrong. It just looks absurd. I accept that as a fair description. And here knight g5 is coming with a winning attack. And yes, and we should really have this being the final moment of the class. I think this exercise is maybe slightly too difficult for the class. I also thought the one where bishop f6 was a little bit too difficult. Robert is saying that this almost looked like the 365 chess logo. Let's see if we can manipulate it into that. Okay, I know this class with 16 positions is always likely to run over. That's why sometimes I'm just moving on, and sometimes I'm just ending it all. So I really enjoy this class. I hope you do as well. And I look forward to see your submissions for next week. And I'll think a lot about how to make it work. I've been complimenting on the logo in the background. Kalia says thank you. I also think it looks fantastic, and I know we cannot react to everything. I know there are some things are not optimal yet because we don't have the form really working, but where we could discuss things in the positions. But I will put a few things in the Facebook group that I thought was most important. And some things I won't, because I think it's important to focus on this is how you approach these positions, rather than getting bogged down in these endless move analysis that can often happen. So I'll put some positions, I'll put the Kasparov short game in the Facebook group. Please give me a day. I just want to clean it up. I also want to make sure the next week's sheets go out, and I sort of have other things to do besides just this class. So I will send out the submissions, the sheet for submission again for Tuesday night, latest UK time. And that means for many of you, you will see it first time on the Wednesday. I wanted to point out a few other things. I'm going to be very strict about submission on time. I'm going to be strict about reading the instructions and submitting them, the answers in the way it's requested. If you can, on your phone, when you're taking photos of the positions, please do a compilation into PDF. It means I can send you back the whole thing in one go, and it should be fine. There will always be, with technology, 1 or 2 glitches, but we'll do whatever we can for sorting them. And we only had 1 this week, and we managed to sort it. And I think that's all I can say. Submit on time and according to the instructions, and you'll get feedback. Thank you very much.